Welcome back. We continue with much more of the Wake Up on WIDU, the WIDU Radio Network. We are also streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. Be a blessing today. Like, share, and comment our live stream platform. We continue with Wake Up, and yep, this is a call-in talk show. It is time now for the Pitts Brothers. We have one Pitts Brothers missing in action, but we got another Pitts Brothers in his place today. He sends his best. He's out on assignment. He'll be back next week. Let us enjoy what the brothers have lined up for us today. Yep, it's MP3 Talk with the Pitts Brothers. Welcome, Pitts Brothers. We're ready for you. We're ready for MP3. Hope your week has been great. Take it away. Good morning.
Thank you, Tammy. We appreciate that. I am Marshall Pitts.
Marshall Pitts.
And I'm Miles Pitts.
And we are
MP3.
Everybody's still in line.
Right. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Marshall.
This is an audition for you now.
Yeah.
We got to replace one of them.
Yeah.
You know. We got to replace one of them. Myron got to go. It is what it is.
Right.
You know, we kick people out of bands and singing groups all the time.
Right.
They'll make the cut.
Right. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Marshall, Migel, and today Miles, your trio talk radio. We want to always thank our participating stations, as we always do. 99.7 FM here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, where we broadcast from. 98.5 FM out of Red Springs, North Carolina. 97.1 FM out of Lumberton, North Carolina. And of course, 92.5 FM out of Laurinburg, North Carolina. They help all make MP3 possible, and we appreciate that. As Tammy said, this is a call-in show. So if you want to call in and participate in our conversation, we certainly welcome that. The numbers to call in, 910-483-6111, 910-483-6111. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. Good morning.
Miles, good to see you in the seat there, buddy. Tammy, make sure you put a little more bass in my microphone. Because I can't have my son come in here with deeper bass baritones than his dad. So
he's the only one that needs some artificial stuff. Some artificial.
Some enhancements.
Yeah.
All right.
Some AI treatment over there.
But anyway, I want to thank everybody. We're ready to get started, though. Myron's not here, but he sent us, as is his duty, a lot of list of topics, and we've chosen a few. First, we're going to get started go down to Delta. You know, many of you may fly Delta when you go in places. We're a hub of that particular carrier. And so, unfortunately, Delta had its situation with the traveler. It was a Miami, Georgia, Miami to Atlanta flight is what it was. And so there was a passenger on the flight. I'm sending it up.
You're giving us too much.
Who was causing some confusion that had to be dealt with, for lack of a better term. So we'll talk about that. Very interesting story. And then we will also get into a situation of it was a basketball game, Nigel?
Yep.
Down in they were playing in Virginia, and one group of middle school students, the visiting team brought rebel flags, Confederate flags, as part of their, and they were going to play, of course, a predominantly black team. And so we'll talk about how that went down. And then finally, we will get into probably one of the most consequential decisions made by the Supreme Court regarding the Voting Rights Act, and how they have, at this point, and we'll get into the details, have actually gutted the Voting Rights Act. And so therefore, it's protected the voting rights for minorities, people of color, for about 60 years now, and they have effectively dismantled it. So those protections will now be going away, and you won't have. I anticipate you will see a lot less minority representation across the board, whether you're talking about the
We're gonna talk about that later.
U.S.
right?
Congress, whatnot, and all the way down to the local level.
You're breaking the whole story down. So the 3 topics are flying disturbance, racism in middle school, and your vote don't count no more. So that's the way we should have broke them topics down. Give them a little teaser. Let them know what's going on.
Right. So let's get with this first topic. I don't know how many of you out in the listening audience actually fly Delta, but I've flown Delta quite a bit, and people we're in this section of the country where Delta is one of the more convenient carriers for folks in our part of the country, and so many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Delta. But getting to the story, this woman from Georgia, and I'll try to get to the story and get her actual name, Shannon Marie Harris.
Shannon Marie Harris. I'm sorry. She was removed from the Miami to Atlanta flight after ignoring multiple requests from the crew to end the phone call. Now that's how it started. She was, if you've ever been on a plane, you know that a certain portion of the plane, while they're still on the tarmac, on the landing strip, they go through the safety instructions that no one listens to.
Right.
Provided you're not in the exit row.
Right.
Provided you're not in the exit row.
Right.
Now, I always pay attention to make sure that the person that's in the exit row is paying attention.
You
If
do?
it's not me, I'm looking at that person. Because they've got a responsibility. They've got to open up the plane.
Right.
So if they're not paying attention, then that's a problem.
Right. And so, but you're right. Nobody listens to the safety instructions for the most part. You'll see people, if you look around when they're doing that, you'll see people chatting and talking, sleeping, listening to the headphones. Nobody's really paying attention. And they should be. Because you just never know. And so, but you're right, Maja. The people across the evacuation section, they have to kick the door down, push the door down, and get let their life rafts, whatever, come out and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a more important job. And they ask you, when you're sitting in those particular sections, are you willing to do what's necessary, by sitting in this seat? And most people say yes, but I've heard a couple of people say no. So they, then they have to do what? That person has to relocate it.
Only way I look at it as is and we got to get to Shannon Marie Harris and her not paying attention and phone and stuff. But the way I look at it as, if I'm in the emergency row, I'm in that seat, then I'm the first off the plane. That's what. So I'm good to go. So I don't mind having that dude at all. And the guy or woman or whoever's sitting in there, they can stumble if they want to. I'm gonna take over because I'm getting off the plane.
But don't you have to help other people get off, or can you just go up once?
Yeah,
you
you're supposed to help other folks.
Oh, I ain't got nothing to do with that. I'm not gonna listen to that part of the instruction. I'm getting off the plane. I'm getting off the plane.
You're supposed to provide assistance to your fellow passengers.
But know what's going on. The plane can be burning down around me. I don't know. Taking on water. I don't know what's going on in the plane.
Right. But anyway, so in this particular situation, Shannon Marie Harris, she was on her cell phone talking. I'm assuming she was talking kind of loud, and so they were preparing to go through the instructions. And when they were going through the safety instructions, she was still loud and on the phone. Okay, so then airplane personnel, the attendants and whatnot, politely went over to her and said, "Well, ma'am, can you please?"
No, we don't know if they were polite. Now, didn't say that in the story.
Well, it does say in the story. It said that a lot of people tried to plead with her to, just, can you get off your phone, please? And she ignored all the airline personnel, absolutely refused, just kept talking. And so at some point, the captain decided, and because she was not doing it in a friendly way, when people were trying to tell her to get off the phone, she would, she was not nice about it, is what I'm trying to say. And so at some point, the captain decided, well, this could go left, this could go south, whatever phrase you want to use for it. So we're gonna take the plane back to where, to the gate. And they
taxied on back to the gate. Now, this is the part that I didn't understand. Okay, so you got a person that's unruly, Miles, and the person is, refusing to follow instructions.
Right.
Now, I didn't know that you could be removed from a plane for not listening to instructions.
Well, when you get belligerent, that's not why. Yeah, when she started, getting loud and belligerent,
That's when he said, "Well, we need to go back to the
So
to the
if
gate."
she had just ignored them, they would have left her on the plane, or we don't know.
I don't know.
We don't know at that point.
But,
Anyway, so
but when somebody's being loud like that and belligerent, you don't know what the next move is. And so,
Right.
So he did the right thing.
So yes, no problem with him going back to the gate, taxiing on back. He's taxiing down the runway. Now he's taxiing back to the gate.
Right.
Flight's now late.
Yes.
Of course, and he ended up being over an hour late. He apologized to the people on the plane.
So
but, so he gets to the gate, but then he deplanes everyone. That's the part I didn't understand.
You're supposed to.
Why
Aren't
would you deplane everyone, take everyone off the plane when I think the thing would be to do, because what you actually end up doing is get the police officer on the plane to get the woman off.
Right.
And so when you deplane everybody, then that means they got to board and go through the whole process again. So whereas you got one person disrupting the plane, you send the police in there to get that one person off, kicking and screaming.
Right.
But they're off the plane.
Well, you don't know what other type of toxic environment has been created. It's in my opinion, it's better to get everybody off the plane, because we don't. The fight may have been getting ready to break out, and you just never know. So everybody, let's cooler heads prevail. Everybody, calm down. Let's get off, take a break, and go to the bathroom or whatever you do, and then we'll come back after we get this deal with this person.
Then I feel like that's making everybody more upset. Cause now I gotta get off the plane. I already done, prepared for my flight.
See, that was where I was going at. See, if I know if I'm at the back of the plane, and and then I'm gotta walk past Shannon.
Right.
and Miss Harris.
Right.
And then, I know she's the reason I'm going to be late. I got some business meeting, I got some recreation, whatever, and I'm going to be an hour late. Some of the passengers might take a swing or two on their way off because she ain't moving. But she did decide to get off when they got off, according to the article.
Right.
She started thinking along the lines, but they made her stay on and those type of things. So
when they got to the gate, first of all, the pilot felt uncomfortable because, the stewardesses and were telling him what was going on and how belligerent this woman was being. So he said, "Well, we're going back to the gate." And when he got back to the gate, he also called law enforcement.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
And so when they got there, they came on the plane and asked Ms. Harris to leave, to come with them. She refused to do so.
Correct.
So not only did she refuse to get off the phone when they were trying to get her off the phone, when the police came on board, she refused to go with the police. And so they deplaned it, and that's another thing, is if you got a passenger on the plane who is refusing all instructions and saying she's not going to go with the police, they have no choice then but to do what? Get physical and remove her.
And
you don't want to do that with a bunch of people on the plane.
With cameras.
Right.
With cameras. That's what they want to do. If those people didn't have cameras and all that kind of stuff, they would have had no problem snatching her up and taking her off
And
the
apparently she had the wherewithal to realize that she didn't want to be on the plane by herself after everybody was up, when she was just her and law enforcement.
Yeah, because See, and that was, in my man, that's why I brought up the deplaning. That's probably what precipitated the deplaning. They decided to say, we better get these people off this plane. I'm almost positive that was a law enforcement thing. Let's get these people off this plane.
Because it's getting ready to go down.
Because it's getting ready to go down. Let's get these people off this plane. Because this lady knew. And this lady knew, like
she
you
knew
said,
too.
She knew what was going to happen once they got her on the plane by herself. Now it's just her on a big 747 with plenty of room to dust up. With plenty of room. So we got DL on the line.
DL, are you there?
Good morning, MP2 and Miles.
Good morning.
What's going on, DL?
Before I get to my point, Marshall, my nephew, my sister's son, he started at Western Carolina, but he said it was too boring, so he went up to Boone. He's graduating at App State next week. I'm just waiting to see who the commencement speaker going to be, but I'm proud of the young man.
Oh,
he did
congratulations.
It in 4 years.
Congratulations,
hey, But Marshall, it ain't too much difference between App State and Western, but he did his thing and pledged Alpha, and I'm glad he did it all in 4 years. So...
he went Greek too. Okay, he pledged.
Yeah.
Okay, he went the wrong way with the fraternity, but that's okay. I mean, I'm just glad he.
Anyway, but hey, MP2, it's 2 things I know in life. You're not going to win on a traffic stop arguing with a law enforcement officer, and you're not going to win arguing with airline stewardess and the captain. You got to not let your emotions get the best of you. And sometimes folks, they get to the point of no return, and they just going to double down. And now the reason why they move them off, because if anybody gets hurt, there could be a liability on the airline. So that's why they move them off, and they're frustrated. But this lady's going to pay the price. She's probably going to be on a no-fly list and a big old fine, and rightfully so. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks, DL. Yeah, and that's another thing. We didn't touch on that, the liability piece of it. If somebody were to get hurt in the scuffle with this woman, they're going to bring probably some kind of claim or lawsuit for their injuries that they sustained because of this woman and because of how they dealt with the situation.
It seems like every week, and I know mental health is.
That's my thing. I was telling Miles, this woman, that's not normal behavior.
If you're on a phone and you didn't know they were getting ready to start the safety instructions, and then a flight attendant, you're trying to get somewhere. She's on the plane, so you know she's trying to get somewhere, like everyone else on the plane. She's got some kind of destination, and they come and tell you to hang up the phone. Then that's what you do. You kind of hang up the phone. You don't get into a back and forth. Even if you're gonna say, well, let me. Even if it's a big business call. You don't say, well, give me 20 seconds, 30 seconds, then you're going to hang up the phone and move on. You don't get deplaned, have the whole plane get deplaned. You refuse to hang up the phone, start yelling and cussing and stuff like that over somebody telling you to hang up a phone when they're trying to get a plane in the air.
Right.
And so we knew something else was going on.
I think also it gets even worse when now you're resisting the police.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I feel like most people, sometimes, you're just having a bad day. You may not get upset with the flight attendants, but if you're getting upset with the police, now you at another level.
Mm-hmm. Right, another level of danger. Exactly right, Ma. And so it said that when she decided to get off with the rest of the passengers, they said that
could have been dangerous. Yeah.
Right. So they were met by several passengers at the gate who were hot. Mm-hmm. Because this delayed their flight by an hour or so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they lost a lot of time. These people had places to go and places to be.
Think about it now. You delay your flight an hour. Some people weren't just going to Miami; they going somewhere else.
Right, connecting flight.
That's a connecting flight. So you might have missed your connecting flight.
Right. With this foolishness.
With this lady who's struggling with whatever she got going on because she wanted to be, and they were telling her to be inconsiderate. Passengers say some dumb stuff. Obviously, that was the last thing on her mind. There's no need to plead and beg her. Right. I mean, if this lady, if she's gonna go into it and go down this road that far with something like just hanging up a phone, why did somebody do the safety instructions?
Yeah.
There's no reasoning with her.
No.
So the flight attendants have tried, and now they're circling back to the gate.
They said a round of applause broke out when the law enforcement officers entered the plane and told her to ask her to exit. Said many passengers began to chant for her to get off the plane. I don't know what they were yelling. Get her off! Get her off! Yeah. I don't know.
Mob mentality at that point. It's a mob mentality at that point. Right or wrong? Right or wrong. Everybody's together, unified in the effort to get this lady off this plane.
Right. So that all went down. But it turned. I believe that you are right, Nigel. I think that this woman probably was having some mental health type of issues going, because that's really not normal behavior. Typically, if airline flight attendant comes by and tells you to put your seat back, push the stuff underneath the seat in front of you further. Get off your phone.
I've heard all that.
Could you hang up your phone? Could you turn off your laptop or whatever?
We've heard all of that. At some point when you're flying, they're going to, which is what a flight attendant's job is.
Right.
That's what their job is, to make sure that the flight goes smooth and all those type of things, and then you're dealing with. But now the situation has really changed. Since 9/11, people don't put up with a whole bunch of
They don't.
Flight attendants and
general public either.
They don't put up with a whole bunch of foolishness on a plane.
Right.
Because people don't know, like you said, Marshall. You don't know what this lady had in mind.
Right.
You don't know. That's why they turned the plane around. Rather to be safe than sorry. People gonna be late, miss connecting flights and all that kind of stuff. But they decided that this would probably be the best route to go, and I think so too.
Right.
Because let's just say she had a talk for a little while. She had a talk for a little while and said she, not going to do this, but then all of a sudden she decided that she was going to do it. She was going to comply. I don't think I really want to be on the flight with her.
No.
I don't think I really. I'm thinking to myself, because all the time now I can't get a nap.
Right.
Now I'm looking around like, something might be wrong. It's like, so I got to pay attention to what she got going on.
Right, definitely. And then there's also the potential for conflict with other passengers, man. somebody get mad enough, man, they might, smack this lady, or the lady might smack them, or just, and then you got a big melee on your hands on the plane. So, I don't know. Hopefully, if she has some mental health issues going on, that she will get some help, because that was not a good thing to do what she did. So let's move on. Let's go to Virginia. And in Virginia, as we talked about at the top of the hour when we were introducing the topics, middle school. This is
Miles people behaving badly.
Right.
Nah, I don't know about my people.
Yeah, there's some of your people, your age group. I mean, middle school is your age group. How is middle school?
Nah. You know he's not in middle school.
Yeah, I mean, he's not in middle school, but I'm just saying, how is middle school?
Oh, that's 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
So 8th grade is how old, Miles?
About
13. Typically
13 to 17. That's in the same age range.
I'm gonna be 18.
I don't care what you get ready to say. I know you feel like you're a lot older than them. That's like saying that me and Marshall not in the same age group. We're in the same age group. We're in the same age group. You're in that 3 or 4 year window.
Yeah, let me see what opinion I can give on this since I'm in
Okay.
All right, so in Virginia, the name of the school, if I remember correctly, it's in a little... And this is basketball. Was it basketball, Mike? It was a basketball game that they were attending. They were coming from Buckingham County, Virginia, and they brought a group of middle school students to play at the Mountain Mission School. Now, Mountain Mission School is predominantly black school. Okay, and I'm assuming that their basketball team was probably similarly situated as far as predominantly black. But they came to they were the visiting team from Buckingham County.
You can't assume that now.
Huh?
You can't assume that.
No, that's true. That's a good point.
Because you can have an all-white school with an all-black basketball team.
No. I'm talking about the Mountain Mission, the black school.
Yeah.
Yeah. You saying they probably had could have had an all-white team?
Yeah, I mean they could have they had an all-black basketball team, right? Mountain Mission didn't.
We don't know what the makeup was, but it's a predominantly black school. So if it's predominantly black school, I just took the leap of faith and assumed that the basketball team was probably predominantly black as well.
That leap of faith is right. You're exactly right.
Yeah, so
sorry, I misunderstood. That leap of faith, that's not really a leap of faith.
All right, so, and they have some footage of this now. And the footage was widely circulated on social media, captured Hurley students, this is the visiting team that came with the Confederate flags, displaying Confederate flags and chanting during the game. They don't tell us what they were chanting, but I was like, okay.
There's no telling.
Yeah.
It could be anything. I don't know what Miles people them were doing. There's no telling.
But the home team, the predominantly black school, they moved quickly to distance themselves from the display of the Confederate flags, putting out a statement quickly clarifying that no one connected to their school brought the flags onto campus.
What do you mean no one connected to the school? The students brought it.
The home school.
The home school.
Yeah,
okay,
the home school is saying we didn't have anything to do with that. We it was not. We didn't bring those flags in here. That was the other team.
So they snuck the flag in.
The school and the home school described this environment as Christ-centered and said divisive symbols have no place in it. So they really pushed back. This is not us. But the reactions to this are the typical reactions when you see stuff like this happen. There are a lot of people who supported the middle school who brought the flags in, the Confederate flags, their right to display those flags because they say it's not about hate, it's about heritage.
Of course.
And being proud of the Confederacy as a marker of regional pride and rebel heritage than a racial provocation, is what they said. Now, of course, folks on the other side of that coin are not buying that. They've never, and that's a ongoing theme. Two opposing counterpoints. Well, that's what counterpoint means about this particular issue. A lot of people who love to display the flag say, well, it's just I'm proud of being a part of the rebel side.
Yeah, they don't like to admit that they're racist.
Right. Well, I don't know if
they're racist.
Huh?
I think most of them, not all of them, but I would say a lot. If you're carrying that flag and proud of it, then by extension, you're
regardless of the impact it has on other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's
what would
you don't care or you're a racist.
What would the middle school know about heritage?
Right.
They learn
don't know
that,
what
and
it
that's what I've always said, and we've always said it on this show. Racism and this type of behavior is learned. Some people think, well, you're born racist or you're not, and those.
No.
It's learned behavior,
Right,
and
right.
they learn that from them parents that are defending them now. They got that from the house.
Right.
They learned that from their parents. Like you learned Miles his radical ideas that he has, whatever radical ideas that he might espouse. Don't espouse them on the show, Miles. We don't want to get kicked off the show, but you learn. I mean, they learn that stuff from their parents. What would an 8th grader know about heritage, not hate? What would an 8th grader know about the war between the states, as they like to call it?
Right.
The war between the states.
Right.
They wouldn't know anything about that. They learned that from home. Matter of fact, even in middle schools and high schools, Miles will know this. They don't teach all that much about the war.
Right.
That war.
They don't.
They don't say a lot about that war in
Well, Miles,
public
you
school.
had one teacher that was pretty high on the Civil War, and as part of, and that was the American history class.
Yeah,
and she
middle school.
focused primarily on the Civil War and the antebellum period, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, which there's nothing wrong with that at all. And when you see, and again, when you say it's heritage, not hate, you don't understand what kind of hurtfulness that just the carrying of this flag means to certain people. Now, I'm trying to think of a symbol.
Now let's before we do that, let's put it in local terms. The Market House has for many decades been a divisive symbol in this community, but there are a lot of historic things that happened at the Market House. There's no doubt. It's undeniable. And so, but you have a lot of people who celebrate the Market House and the important landmark that it is from a historical aspect. But they don't. A lot of times, some of those folks don't seem to care about the other side of the coin, in which for African Americans, many African Americans don't really. They understand it's historical, but they don't really. That doesn't make it any less, offensive to them, because they know that as there were points where their African Americans were treated as chattel and sold there. And then often you hear the counter argument, well, it was only a few, it was not that many. I said, well, as if that's to make it less offensive.
First of all, we don't know the number.
Right.
We don't know the number. Yeah, they always say it's few, it's not that many. But what I would say to that is that the offensive part is they sold black people just like they had sold other goods and services.
Right.
Foods, horses,
Right.
whatever else they sold.
Right.
That's why it's called the market
Right.
house, because they sold things there. So for a person to not understand why that is offensive to a person.
So
now,
but for many people the history is much more important, and the impact or how it may make certain groups feel,
because it's not their group.
Right. Correct.
MP1, Miles, you know this too. I mean, it's not your group. If it doesn't offend your group, then yeah, you look at the history part of it.
Right.
And, there are so many groups of people that have been offended by certain things. But now, it seems to me that a lot of times black people are always trying to say why this is offensive to me. Now, I don't know of a symbol. I can't think of a symbol right now that we could display that would offend the integrity of the majority race. That would some type of symbol that we would display. I'm trying to think of something that would
make them
maybe.
feel bad about their
make
history.
them feel bad about history, or make them something. The same thing as the rebel flag does. And I
think a lot of times when we
let's let Miles talk.
Well, let me finish this. When we've displayed depictions of like some of the savagery that took place, like the lynchings and public lynchings with groups of whites eating popcorn or whatever just to enjoy the show, I think that's part of the reason why our president and his administration has been going through a concerted effort to make sure those kind of images or those kind of conversations don't happen. I think he used the term because it makes our white kids or whites feel bad, guilty about, and we don't want them feeling guilty about what happened. So they do. There is some feelings of some sort about when you display those vicious images that have occurred in this country that they don't want to, many people don't want to discuss or talk because of it really shows how savage human beings can be, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think I agree with that too. But I also think one particular symbol or group that is given the, like, they understand how bad it could be is like the Nazi Germany party. Like, even when I was going
Jewish
to school,
people, right.
Yeah, even when I was in school, the way they talked about like the Holocaust was much more empathy and much more concern than they ever talked about slavery. Slavery was just like, it happened, it was bad.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. But then with the Holocaust, they got me reading like, the journals of people. They got me like have people explain their experiences, showing me videos and everything. That just wasn't given to slavery. I mean, obviously the documentation wasn't as good, but you get what I'm saying? I feel like they hold the Holocaust and the atrocities that happened there with much more like respect versus like what happened to black people in America.
And not just Jewish people, but people are allowed to talk about their history, except for African Americans. Every time we talk about our history, it was a long time ago.
Right.
That's one of the first things. It was a long time ago. I mean, why we still talking about that?
Why can't we just move past that? That wasn't us. We didn't do that.
Yeah, we didn't do that. My great grandparents or whoever it was that did that. But we all know that Jim Crow wasn't that long ago.
Right.
Jim Crow laws and different things, that wasn't that long ago.
I was born in a segregated hospital.
Yeah, you were born in a segregated hospital. I mean, that wasn't that long ago. So people, when they start talking about, let's move on to something else, let's talk about something else and those type of things. So, but again, we're not allowed to talk about those type of things. And when you bring up the Market House is a good example.
Nobody, right. There
are a lot of people that say, well, let's just move on from that.
Right.
I mean, goods and services sold there as a historical landmark, a monument, those type of things. And even when you tried to create, as mayor, you tried to create another monument. Because a lot of times, for a long time, and maybe even now, when news shows Fayetteville,
they were supposed to stop that doing back when I was mayor, but as being the symbol of the city.
Yeah, symbol of the city.
Right. So
it was on a lot of the paperwork and landmarks and all that kind of stuff. It was a symbol of the city.
It was, yeah, and still is.
It still is. So but when we start talking about that, then people start saying, well, let's move past that. Let's move past that. We've gotten past that and those type of things. Listen, when someone says something about the rebel flag and they're saying it's heritage, it's not hate, they're looking at it from their lens, which is what a lot of people do. They look at it from their own standpoint.
Right.
This is my heritage. Your heritage is you lost the Civil War. We wouldn't be having this conversation if you had won the Civil War. You lost. You lost the Civil War. And so that's your heritage is that of a loser. And so that's what it is. It's a losing side.
Well, it was a losing side, but that doesn't mean you can be the losing side of a war or a conflict. Doesn't mean that you're not proud of the valiance, how valiant your fighters were, or how.
No. What I was getting ready to say was yes. Your heritage is you're part of the losing side. You're part of the losing side that wanted to keep slavery. You're part of the losing side that wanted to keep brutality. You're part of the losing side that felt that what was going on then was right. That's your heritage. So you can say it's heritage and not hate. Back then when it was going on, it was definitely a lot of hate involved.
Oh, definitely.
So for you to say this heritage, not hate, you're not being inclusive about all that was going on back then.
Well, you're not being accurate about the history is what you're not being. But anyway, I don't I don't know what prompted these young people. But I agree with you, Majo, that it was their indoctrination by their parents and adults, because who and why they would do it specifically going to the predominantly black school, that parents had to have some say so in that I mean, just that they wouldn't, parents don't just willingly let their kids go into a provocative situation without them, knowing something about it.
And I thought, and I could be wrong. That's why I'm glad we got Miles on the show today. But I thought young people are supposed to change all that. Racism is supposed to die out.
Right.
Y'all supposed to change all that, Miles. What's going on? Y'all falling down on the job. Your generation.
I would say it's become, like I was saying earlier, it's become more polarized. So the thinking can be a lot more like liberal among liberal people, but it's also becoming increasingly conservative among conservative people. And I think that's a function of like the media, because like, you know, like I said, you know, you get your positive feedback. If all you're seeing online is just Republican stuff, or all you're seeing is Democrat stuff, you know, you're gonna start thinking more in those things.
Reinforces what you believe.
That's what I'm saying. Whereas before, you would have chances, you know, scuff up with people who may think differently than you. So I just think it's a function of the times. But I will say, like, I have noticed even in my school, like, people either are just ignorant and they do racist stuff because they're ignorant, or they're just simply like conditioned to be hateful. But a lot of times I see ignorance now, especially in my school.
Really?
It's more so ignorance than just pure hate. Because then when you sit down to educate them, they're like, you know, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Especially like, I notice this a lot in like the Asian community, because they're just not as educated on racial issues.
What kind? Can you give us some examples of what kind of things they would do and just out of ignorance?
Remember what kind of radio we on here?
Yeah, I got you.
Be careful that button.
I got you. Give me some examples.
Or not just when you think people are just not necessarily racist, but just ignorant about how things are.
Yeah, so I think at least I go to, you know, a school, you know, where it's a little bit more, they have a little bit more wealth. So I think the ideas are a little bit different than what you would find, you know, at this basketball game or whatever. But what I've noticed is that a lot of people, you know, sometimes it could be, you know, white people or it could be Asian people. They just don't really know about why things may be offensive. Like, you know, Madra was saying earlier, they just don't know. And it's not even out of a thing of like, you know, I hate black people or I hate whoever. It's just like,
they don't have to deal with it. It doesn't impact it. It doesn't impact it.
So, for example, we have a Halloween party at school, and you know, some guys, South Asian guys, dress up and they have some ski mask on, and you know, trying to have some chains and everything like that, and you know, trying to dress like what they say Hawaiian.
They're trying to dress like what?
Hawaiian. You know that is Hawaiian.
Yeah, you don't know what Hawaiian is?
Hawaiian.
YN.
Like yeah. Don't say that. I didn't know you saying. Okay, gotcha.
And they were, you know, they got this boom box or whatever, playing some, you know, rap music, and people had to explain to them, you know, this is not okay. And after that, it was like, oh, maybe we probably shouldn't have done this, you know, saying all that stuff. It wasn't, and I could tell it was sincere. It wasn't just them saying that. And so I think
these Asian folks.
Yeah, and they, you know,
and they're smart. Supposedly. That's a stereotype too, right?
Ignorance doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. Ignorance means you just don't know something.
You just don't know.
Right. That's all I mean.
These boys, I feel like, you know, who brought this flag, I think there is a little bit more hate involved than something you may see at my school.
So now, based on the area, being a more rural community where they came from, and the flags, I mean, that's over and above what you would typically see just on the.
But it's hard for me to believe. It's hard for me to believe. See, these same Asian students, Miles, and we can give them a pass. We can give them a pass when it comes to stuff like that. But it's hard for me to believe that someone could not know, could not be aware. And the reason why I say that is because they never, when a person is showing Halloween content, if you notice how they never say do anything or say anything that's offensive towards their own race. They never, they're aware of that. Mm-hmm. They never do anything. They never wear Halloween costumes that are Asian costumes. Whites never wear Halloween that are white costumes that, you know, that have something to do. Like, for instance, you never see people parading around in Halloween with a Ku Klux Klan hat on.
Right.
And those type of things, they it's always offensive to another race, and then they always fall back on the I don't know. Listen, and again, you might be living in a world where you are not around black people and don't know that that's offensive. Right. But in this particular case, they're around you.
What I'm saying is, before they came to my school, they were.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And a lot of times, especially at my school, a lot of times their parents came here to America. So, you know, the parents don't really know too much and not invested too much in racial issues or understanding America's history. So that's what I'm saying. I feel like the specific people at my school, I can give them a pass. But if I'm just in Fayetteville at some regular high school, then, you know, I can't really necessarily give a pass out to those people as easily.
Well, and I have to say this: when it comes, there is such a thing as being racist unintentionally, and not really knowing you're being racist. Because it took for most of the history of this country. I would say that most white Americans could not understand or relate to when we talked about being abused by law enforcement. I mean, I think a lot of them they couldn't relate to that because it didn't happen to them. Mm-hmm. It never happens to them. And so, but I think with the now we're in this age with everybody's got a cell phone and all, they start to see for themselves, just like the television did back in the 60s when the police dogs were attacking people in water hoses. Before that, those images came out. A lot of white people who lived wherever, they was like, oh, what's all this hoopla that these black folk are complaining about down there? But when they saw the images, that changed things. It's like, oh wow,
for some.
I didn't know it was like that.
Changed things for some.
For some, right. And so the same thing with police brutality or the way the police treat people of color sometimes. They're I think they now with George Floyd and others, they know a little bit better that, hey, well, things do happen to them a lot of times that don't happen to us. For some of those people, I
feel like most people, even if they're a little bit, maybe a little racist, they still can understand that. They just may not want to admit it. But
that's where I'm at with it. I'm thinking a lot of times, especially now.
Right.
I'm not talking 20 years ago before Rodney King and all this other stuff, before all the video footage throughout the years.
Right.
It's George Floyd. I'm talking about now. If you have a Caucasian American who says they don't understand or they don't believe that happens to black people, they have buried their head in the sand because it's just too much information to say otherwise.
Right.
I mean, they can say that, but I mean, it's just too much. It's just too much other things, too much information, too many videos, too much going on for you to say that couldn't happen to. Now you might say that if he had did this, then this would not have happened to him. If he did, but you see it with your own eyes. You see exactly what's going on with your own eyes, and I think a lot of times people just don't want to believe. A decent person doesn't want to believe that could happen to someone for no reason. They don't. They might not want to believe that.
Particularly if it's never happened to them. I mean, or anybody that they know. It's like, that seems like a bit of a stretch.
I think it's because they want to, like Uncle Madra said, they kind of want to be able to trust, law enforcement or government,
right?
Because they believe in those systems.
They can.
Well, you always tell about Dave Chappelle and when he was riding with his white friend. Mm-hmm. It was about how he the white friend had no fear when
so they get pulled over by Dave Chappelle. I don't know if it's a skit or he talking about it on his show, but he talks about the comedian Dave Chappelle talks about he's riding with his right friend. I think his right friend was named Ken or something like that. Scott, Chris, it was something like that. But anyway, so they get stopped, pulled over by the police. And his white friend was driving. His white friend was drunk and high. And so he said when he got pulled over, he said just hold it here, Dad. I'm gonna go talk to him. And jumped out the car. Now every black man in America knows that's a no. Right. One, you should be driving in that condition.
Right.
But two, you definitely not gonna jump out the car. He said as soon as the car put in park, he said, "Oh, don't do that." He said, "No, don't worry about it, Dave. Everything's gonna be all right." He jumped out the car and talked to him. No ticket, no nothing. They drove on off. Right. He said he drove on off. So they have a different experience.
They do.
When it comes to different things like that. But again, if you run across someone who says they either haven't heard of that before now or don't see that happening now, I mean they would have had to have been living on the moon for the last 10 years. Right. I mean, because it's just too much. It's too much proliferation out there. Yeah,
it's too much out. So, but real quick before we get out of here, we'll segue into this the next time MP3 meets, because this is so important. Is the Civil Rights Act, Civil Rights Act of 1964 was huge, and then the very next year, Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed, and that legislation was monumental in paving the way for the protection of minority voting strength in this country. And so it was in place for decades and decades, and that's why you saw a lot of that 60-year period, a huge influx of minority persons being involved in the government of our country, where you're talking about the U.S. Congress, whether you're talking about governors, mayors, county commissioners, city council members, what have you. It's all part of the fabric that has taken place. Well, let's tell you what happened real quick before we have to get out of here. The Supreme Court just voted 6-3 to gut the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Further gutted.
Further gutted. Yeah, because they had already, a few years ago, when President Obama was in office, they eliminated the pre-clearance requirement for the that was part of the Voting Rights Act. What that simply means is, if a jurisdiction, a county government or a city government or a state government was going to change how they voted or how they arranged their districts, they had to get that pre-cleared with the Justice Department first to make sure it didn't have a negative impact on minority voting. And so they had to. So if you wanted to change your district to, let's say, to an at-large format or a combination format of voting, then you had to show, well, when we change it to this, or we have this voting pattern in our community, it's not going to harm the voting interest of people of color. Okay, everybody got that? So that was thrown away. So now states and local governments don't have to get the pre-clearance anymore. They want to change their voting structure, they can change it, and then if it's a negative impact on minorities, then they have to sue to show that there's a negative impact. The people being discriminated against or having the voting strength diluted, they have to initiate the action, whereas where it was before, the government would be your protector.
Which means that you have to get attorneys and everything else involved.
Which a lot of people cannot afford.
Which a lot of people can't do that. Right.
So that was the first thing that was struck down. Now, they finished the job this week when they got rid of the fact of the intent. They made it an intent thing now. In other words, if you want to prove that, you want to show that you're being discriminated against or minority voting strength is being disenfranchised or discriminated against, you have to show that the government or body that's doing these drawing of the lines and redistricting or what have you, did it with intent and purpose, that they were purposefully doing this to dilute minority voting strength,
which is what they're doing,
or discriminate against minority voters. Okay?
Which is what they're doing.
Yeah, but the problem is this: folks who are listening to this say, "Well, okay, well that makes sense." Well, what it does, though, when you in practical application, many people may not know, it is very, very difficult to prove discriminatory intent. You can give a bunch of different reasons why something may have happened. For instance, a lot of times with minority voters, there'll be a lot of things, and they used to do poll taxes and things like literacy tests. Well, we're just doing this to make sure that everybody who votes, is familiar with the American system and knows the rules and regulations and blah blah blah. And so with this, they'll say that, well, it's not based on, we didn't have any discriminatory intent against race. This is a political party affiliation. We trying to get more Republicans in office or more Democrats in office, and so that's why we're doing this. And so unless you have a smoking gun, like, you got somebody who's recorded a testimony or somebody put it in writing,
which is not going to happen.
No, we need to redraw this thing because we don't want these black folks being able to vote, or these Hispanic folks having greater voting strength. So we need to change these rules, and this is how we're going to do it. You're not going to get that. You're not going to. So it's almost. So what I'm trying to say, ladies and gentlemen, is to prove discriminatory intent and the smoking gun evidence it's almost next to impossible most of the time to prove that, because nobody's ever going to admit or put that in writing or get recorded saying that. And so how that makes this much harder to do now. And before, let me tell you what it was before, you could go by the impact. Regardless of what your intent was, if the impact is to disenfranchise or dilute minority voting strength, then it failed the test. you couldn't do what you're doing, and so, but that's no longer the case.
So now a group of people, when legislatures can withdraw the lines, they can carve up a state,
Do whatever
like
they
North
want to do,
Carolina,
basically.
and dilute the African American, Hispanic vote, whoever,
Right.
or whoever's in power,
Right.
at that time can carve up the lines, dilute African American, Hispanic vote, white vote, whatever vote that you want to vote, and that person really will not have much of a recourse because you don't have to have the pre-clearance anymore.
Right.
So for a lot of years,
And just because it has a negative impact on black voters or Hispanic voters does not make it illegal.
Now,
unless you
several-
can show there's some discriminatory
now
intent.
several states in the South will already begin to.
They've already started.
They've already started to redistrict their areas so they can make sure they can dilute certain votes. And the thing is this: for a long time, you've heard people. Back to that ignorance Miles was talking about. You've heard for a long time, people talked about that your vote don't count. Pretty soon, your vote will not count. Your vote will not count.
Right.
It won't, because it'll be diluted to the point where you're going and voting and those type of things, and your vote will not matter. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't go vote, but it does mean that your vote will not matter
Much
as
less.
much as it did. It will matter much less than it did. They've been trying to get at the Voting Rights Act. Let me show you how voting matters. If people had came out, I wish Myron was here for this section too. If people had come out and voted and gotten Hillary Clinton in instead of Trump the first time around, then we wouldn't be facing what we're facing now. Voting. That's what people don't understand. Voting matters. It really does. And so now we're facing. And so now, what does this put into play? When you have a Supreme Court like we have right now, where they're going to vote lockstep 6-3. They're going to vote 6-3 against anything minority, African American, Asian, Hispanic. They're going to vote 6-3 against those things. So if you have there's a whole lot of things on the table. Brown versus Board of Education.
Well,
Miles, I'm glad you can get in school now, because you might have been in a whole different school. You might have been in a whole different school a few years from now.
Yeah.
It might be, Brown versus Board of Education. You just never know what's going to fall. The Voting Rights Act is considered
marriage equality, all that
marriage
stuff.
equality, Voting Rights Act, Roe versus Wade. Those type things. Those are your big pillars. Roe has already failed.
Now the Voting Rights Act.
1964 Voters' Rights Act has failed. Right. So you're gonna have different areas where stuff starts to fall down, and the judges. And I've told you, judges need term limits. They do. You just can't have a Supreme Court judge just sit up there forever and have these bad rulings for the next. And some of these judges are young.
Well, that was the whole intent. People don't realize that. First of all, President Trump was fortunate from his perspective that he got to appoint three Supreme Court justices.
3 bad ones.
Well, what I'm saying, but it's still
three bad ones.
three. And so now we have we have a supermajority on the court.
Yep.
And not only is the Supreme Court, but the lower court, federal courts as well. He's had the opportunity, his administration, to really flood the lower courts, federal courts, with super conservative type young judges. And so what that means, that's going to be his biggest legacy, because those judges are going to be there for life, for years, 20, 30, 40 years from now, still doing, because as you said, mind you, at the end of the day, all conflicts, the really big ones that are important, where they end up landing, in the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Is there any way that another body of legislature can impose limits on the Supreme Court?
No.
Well,
no checks and balances for the Supreme Court.
We can the legislature. See, the Supreme Court is they interpret the law and how the laws
supposedly
right. The legislature, they write the law, okay, and determine things. So you could have let's say a Democrat get elected, or a Democratic legislature get elected. They may decide that if they have enough to change the Constitution or whatever, or make an amendment to the Constitution, we want to have 13 justices instead of 9 justices. Okay, so it can you can change some of these things, but It's President Trump is he's as they what's it say? He's sitting in the catbird seat now.
Vote matters. That's why voting matters.
His legacy will be the courts. Definitely the courts. We have to get out of here now. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. There's the music in the background. I am Marshall Pitts.
Module Pitts.
I'm Miles Pitts.
And we are
MP3.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Your station for inspiration and information. 1600 AM, 99.7 FM.